website at www.eastham-ma.gov. All right, we'll start with public and select board information. Start with the board first. Jerry?
Yeah, I wanted to say one thing, a shout out, thank you to everyone who was involved in the Veterans Day ceremony at our Veterans Memorial. I thought it was well done, but I want to add a really extra special shout out to the students of Eastham Elementary School, because if we went in there and if you were a veteran, they gave you a card, a hand-colored card with a handwritten note in it from a student, and I won't say the student's name because it's so small, but every veteran got one. It made my day. It was absolutely a wonderful experience, and I wanted to really thank them very much, and also a thank you to the teachers and staff of the elementary school who made it possible. But it was just, every veteran I talked to just loved the fact that they got a handwritten card. So that was cool. My thank you to Eastham Elementary School students.
All right, anyone else from the board? No? All right, anyone from the public have anything that's not on the agenda? All right, we'll start with the agenda. We have Cape Light Compact, Maggie Downey.
Oh, easy, I love it.
Wow.
And to advance, I...
Just have to speak because we lost our clicker, so.
Start it again?
Just have to say next.
Next slide, okay. Just for the board, I am hearing impaired, so I just make sure my ears are up as high as they can go, but I just want to make sure that I can hear you. So if I look at you and it's not, repeat the question. So thank you.
Same
All right,
here.
so good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here. My name is Maggie Downey, and I'm the administrator of the Cape Light Compact. And I know you have we had two members, at least I saw Tom and thought we had our alternate. I ran into him on the way down the stairs, so we'll be back. So I want to thank you very much for your appointments. They are great additions to the board. They are very dedicated and active and participate in all of our board meetings and are a great asset to the board. So thank you for your appointings. I'm here tonight to talk about the Cape Light Compact. For those of you in the audience that don't know, the Cape Light Compact is the town of Eastham and 20 other towns on the Cape and Vineyard that came together back in the late 1990s as a result of the Massachusetts Restructuring Act, which was passed in 1997. And we were formed originally through an intergovernmental agreement and then reorganized in 2017 as a result of the Municipal Modernization Act as a joint powers entity. And our three primary purposes are power supply. We negotiate the terms and conditions of your electric supply contract for customers who stay with a compact, or you can choose a competitive supplier. We also run the energy efficiency programs on the Cape and Vineyard, and then we advocate for consumers by participating in regulatory proceedings with the Department of Public Utilities in Boston, making sure that that Cape and Vineyard residents have a seat at the table on policy decisions that will affect the entire Commonwealth. So next slide. So we are on a calendar year basis, not a fiscal year. So I wanted to report on 2023 before I start to talk about, I'm going to give an overview of 2023, touch on 2024, and then get into the 25 to 2027 energy efficiency plan. The majority of the work and staff here at the Cape Light Compact are working on energy efficiency efforts. And in 2023, we had 810 residents participate in the Compact's energy efficiency programs, and we returned approximately $650,000 worth of incentives. Incentives could be in the form of a rebate for a heat pump, an Energy Star dehumidifier, or any of the incentives that customers or businesses are eligible for. So every year, and we send these reports quarterly to the town, and they're on our website. You can track to see how many residents in Eastham are participating, how many kilowatt hours have been saved in each quarter, and they go back all the way to 2002. So we've got quite a record of seeing who has participated in our energy efficiency program. Are eligible for, when we come out to your home, we'll look at ways and opportunities to reduce your overall energy burden. We'll look at opportunities for air sealing and insulation. We'll look at your heating system. Again, ways to identify, and you'll end up with a home energy assessment or a report that will identify potential options that you can take to improve your overall energy burden. That could be reducing your kilowatt hours, or if you heat with natural gas, the therms in your house. Again, all designed to lower the overall cost of staying in your home and to make you more comfortable in your home. So we have, with the weatherization report, you're eligible for up to 100% for those measures, depending upon your income. So if you are an income eligible or a low income customer, weatherization, air sealing, new appliances, as well as heating systems, you are eligible for at no cost. On our website, we have a chart that gets updated every year with the income levels to determine whether or not you are eligible for low income or if you're moderate income. Low income is 60% or below of the state or area median income. Moderate income is anyone between 61 and 80% of area or state moderate median income. If you're moderate income, you can self-attest now. You don't have to provide any income verification to get 100% coverage for weatherization. You could just simply call the 800 number and say, I fall within this income category, and you would have no cost installation. If you go deeper, like heating system replacements at no cost, that's when income verification has to come in to verify where you will fall in this. For market rate customers, those are not in that income, 75% of the cost of the air sealing and insulation is covered. So if it would be a $10,000 insulation job, the program would cover $7,500 of that. We're also offering incentives for heat pumps. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts, through their Global Warming Solution Act, passed a law where we have to reduce our usage by 2030. And in order to do that, they've set a goal of electrifying 1 million homes between now and 2030. And the target for those homes are homes that heat with oil, propane, or electric resistance. It's specifically targeting those few and not necessarily natural gas, because you will actually lower your overall energy burden if you move off of electric resistance, oil, or propane and install heat pumps. If you heat with natural gas is less expensive. You can say there are opportunities to do a partial installation so that you can use it in the shoulder seasons, but fully replacing your natural gas system, which might be good for the climate and reducing greenhouse gases, will put you in a higher energy burden at this time. There are policies being discussed at the legislature to change that or have discounted rates for electric heating again. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but they were many, many, many years ago. We had electric heat rates back in the 70s. So the whole home repumps are up to $10,000, or partial is $1,250 per ton. Basically, partial home rebate works out to be about $4,500 per house, as opposed to $10,000 for your whole home. Next slide. We also are offering in 2024, these are highlighted in yellow, the two in yellow because we've closed them because they were so successful. The Cape Light Compact pursued and received a grant from the state Clean Energy Center for an e-bike incentive. We had phase 1 and phase 2 where we were able to offer up to 75% of the cost, or $1,200, and then again next round up to $1,500 towards the cost of an e-bike for income eligible residents. So again, the state is trying to use this as a form of transportation. We thought this was a great fit for the Cape and the Vineyard because we have so many bike trails, and a lot of our students, our youth, and many workers are traveling the bike trails to and from places of employment. So that was a very successful program. I believe the state, taking the results of what happened down here, will be rolling out a statewide e-bike program sometime in 2025. CVO, the Cape and Vineyard Electrification Offering, was an effort where we targeted deed-restricted single-family homes, and we fully decarbonized them. We had a pilot budget in 2023 and 24. We were able to serve 55 homes throughout the Cape and Vineyard, where we fully decarbonized, removed the fossil fuel, we put in heat pumps, we paired those with solar PV, and then we added 25 of those 55 homes received batteries, also for resilience. So fully decarbonizing the home. The results of that, we had to do an evaluation, will be presented to the DPU to see lessons learned and what if any, can this program be continued throughout other areas in the Commonwealth. And we also have Energy Star appliance rebates, room ACs, air purifiers, dehumidifiers, and electric dryers. Again, all this information is on the Cape Light Compact's website on how to access the programs and submit for rebates. So next slide. I'm going to touch briefly on the Energy Saver Home Loan Program. So this is a program that is run by the Massachusetts Climate Bank, not by the Cape Light Compact, but we saw they put out an RFP looking for a concierge service for the Energy Saver Home Loan Program. And basically what they wanted was somebody to be boots on the ground, promote the program, and our role is to educate customers, consumers. This is a single-family home ownership program, loan program, get the word out, and then we actually help somebody who wants to apply for the loan to fill out the loan application. So we will take you all the way from identifying the best path for you, which is the best cost, lowest cost, because I'm going to talk about 3 different loan products here in a second, and then we'll walk you right through the application and hand you off to the bank so you can pursue the loan. Next slide. So why did we pursue the Energy Saver Home Loan? Is the Energy Saver Home Loan acts like a second mortgage. But it covers measures, improvements that we're not eligible to do through our energy efficiency program. So this is if somebody, here's the income, it is income based, it's up to 135% of area median income. So again, you heard me now, I'm introducing a 3rd level of income verification, which is why we're here to walk everybody through it, explain where you fit, are you eligible, and what program is the best strategy for you. It is based on, the income is based on who is on the deed. So in Barnstable County, if you are one person on the deed and you are earning $166,645 or less, you would be eligible for the Energy Saver Home Loan Program. If there are 2 people on the deed, your 2 combined income, so this is just based on your income taxes, it's not an asset-based test, you would be eligible, you have to meet that threshold. So again, this has to be a home that you live in, that you own, and a single-family home is defined as anywhere from 2 to 4 units, and we have to have guaranteed energy savings, which we're here to calculate to see what you want to do, and are we actually saving energy in order for you to move forward. So we'll do all the work for you before you get to the point where you go to the bank and say, oh, you didn't pass that test. So when you leave our hands, you should be able to, everything that you want to do would be approved or at least eligible for the Energy Saver Home Loan Program. Next slide. It is, as I said, it's like a second mortgage. The loan amounts range from $10,000 to $100,000. It is a 20-year loan, and the first 18 months are interest only. If you are below 80% AMI, it is a 0.5% interest, and if you are 81 to 135, the interest on the loan is 2%. The participating lenders locally, we have Cape Cod 5, then there's Bay Coast Bank, Bristol County Savings as well. Those are the banks that are participating in the Climate Bank, and that's who we're working with here. So next slide. This slide that I'm going to show you shows all of the things that are eligible through this Energy Saver Home Loan Program. So again, it includes your heating system, so you could replace an air source heat pump, a ground source heat pump, thermostats, upgrades to your panels if you needed to do trench work, in order to also include solar. So if you've already decarbonized your home, but you want to have a solar panel, but you just didn't want to go, conventional loans are 8+% right these days, this would be a good product. If you need tree work in order to put in your solar, or you might need a new roof in order to insulate that attic, all of those things are covered here. And it's, as I said, they've got a great list of measures that are eligible for this program. So next slide. So that's the Energy Saver Home Loan Program. And so it can do everything. It's really soup to nuts. It'll focus. What we are here to help you do is say, okay, this is what you would be eligible for through the Cape Light Compact program at 100% or maybe low cost. You don't need to take a loan for that. But we can cover solar, but your income puts you in this path. This is the way you should go with the low interest loan. We've also just successfully negotiated a small program. It's only $4.9 million. We received a grant. It's a zero-interest loan from the USDA Rural Energy Services for solar. This is a Cape and Vineyard solar program for market rate customers. So this is loan. You have to go, Cape Cod 5 won the award, went out to bid and hired somebody to be the administrative services for the loan. The interest rate is 2.75%, still a great interest rate, but higher than the Energy Saver Home Loan Program. But this is going to be, you have to go to the bank and you have to be eligible of carrying an unsecured loan. So you have to have a good credit score. The other loan, so it's not a second mortgage, it's an unsecured 10-year loan, and the loan amounts are up to $50,000 specifically for solar. So this is the second product for a loan. You go ahead, you can go to the next slide. And then some of you may be familiar with the Cape Light Compact's heat loan program, which is also a zero-interest loan that helps fund energy efficiency improvements. So where are we headed? So that's the world right now in 2024. It got very complicated, which is good news is we have lots of programs to help guide you through, but there are lots of what's the best route for me to take? And again, our goal is to make, if you decide to move forward, that you're aware of what is the lowest cost, what programs, do you need to borrow for something, or would you already get that at no cost? That's what we're here to help you navigate. Now, we're looking forward to the 25 to 27 three-year energy efficiency plan. The state, through the last update to the 22 Climate Act, has shifted. For many years, even now, I've always talked to you about kilowatt-hour savings. The lighting here, the street lights in town, always about lowering your kilowatt hours and saving energy, or if you're gas heat, reducing the therms. In the next three-year plan, due to the Climate Act, we are now pivoting to adding not only energy efficiency, but decarbonization, as it is in fact called the 25 to 27 Energy Efficiency and Decarbonization Plan. So what does that mean? Other than a mouthful of big words, it means we're going to further emphasize decarbonizing homes, electrification of homes with the focus on, as I said, oil, propane, and electric resistance heat, hopefully fully displacing, and then for anyone with natural gas, adding a heat pump for shoulder seasons. And that is really the whole focus of the next three-year plan. It is also, if you want to go to the next slide, will be coupled with equity and customer experience. So when I say equity, we've done a lot of evaluations, looked at over 20 years worth of data, and what is being shown is customers who rent their homes, whether they're residents and businesses. If you think of most of the business, a lot of our small businesses in Eastham or any town, they don't own their space. They're renting it, but yet they're responsible for paying all of the bills. So our focus is going to be on renters, whether it's a small business or a home, residential renting that, multifamily properties that rent, as well as some of our EJ communities. We have pockets of equity communities and environmental justice communities peppered throughout the Cape, so we will be focusing to make sure that they participate at a higher rate, because historically they have not. Another focus that falls into equity are customers who speak a language other than English. Again, targeting where we have a Brazilian or a Portuguese community to make sure that they're aware and that all of the information is available in languages that is their first or native language. And then again, also expanding on our customer experience. And our first step is making sure that we were the provider of information on the Energy Saver Home Loan Program, the RUS loan, and our energy efficiency program. So just being here to answer questions for all of us. Next slide. So I talked a little bit about enhancing small businesses. We've expanded to allow for insulation and air sealing of small businesses regardless of whether you own that space or rent. That we rolled out at the end of this plan. That will be continued in the next three-year plan. We will also be expanding our Main Streets efforts and coming back over time if we've hit, making sure that every community has had a Main Street event. Main Street is where we go, we target an area, we provide lots of information in advance, and then for 1 week we are in the community with all of the tools trying to do as much as possible for these small businesses so we don't have to come back a second or a third time and disrupt their business operations. So that's our Main Street. We're also continuing to offer our nonprofit offering, which offers up to 100% incentives for charitable nonprofits. That has been very popular with some of our faith-based organizations, as well as we have a plethora of nonprofit organizations throughout the Cape that can also avail themselves to these resources. Next slide. So this is what is available statewide, not only on Cape and Vineyard, for residential, for our low and moderate income and our renter offers. So that little tag clipboard denotes income verification. So if you fit in the low income category, you would be eligible at no cost, as I've said, for weatherization, barrier mitigation. And what barrier mitigation is, you could have knob and tube electric panel that's preventing you from installing a heat pump. You would get that replaced, upgraded at no cost. You could have vermiculite in your attic or mold, something that wouldn't allow you to add needed insulation. That would be covered, as well as I said, electrification, 100% cost for a new heating system, a heat pump heating system. If you're moderate income, whether you own or rent, again, I said, you just self-attest and you get 100% weatherization. If you want to provide income verification and move forward, you would be eligible for the same barrier mitigation and electrification after you're income verified as a customer. And we also have rebates for ground source heat pumps, as well as your typical mini splits for other air source heat pumps. And then the market rate customers, again, rebates, as talked about, for weatherization, as well as barrier mitigation, but there's a cap. You can see there's a cap per unit as opposed to 100% cost, as well as up to a $10,000 rebate for the heat pumps. We're going to continue that, and $2,000 slightly reduced per condenser in a home. So again, that's the equity focus, targeting on low income, moderate income customers and renters, because that's the population that historically has not participated at the highest levels over the last 20 years. Next slide. Wrap this all together, and hopefully we've got enhanced customer service. Again, triaging what's the best program for you, identifying the most incentives, and helping you select the pathway and develop a strategy for how to move forward in making all of these improvements. Next slide. The next 2 slides, we are required under the law to provide funding for our workforce development. It's no secret that we have an aging workforce, we have a graying workforce, and we're working with all of our tech schools, the Upper Cape Tech and our regional tech, the Harwich Tech, Cape Cod Tech, to make sure that their programs are linked with our technicians, so that we're training the HVAC installers, the plumbers, the electricians, the linemen at all of our utilities. So there is an effort, $24 million per year, starting in the next 3-year plan, to target workforce development to make sure that we have the support and the workers going forward to maintain all of the measures that we will be installing, hopefully, over the next several years. Next slide. This next slide is just information. We have a lot of data that we've been collecting for many years. I just put this in because if you want to poke around and see what's out there, you can always look at the Compact site, but also masssavedata.com provides a statewide overview of where has all the money been spent, what measures have been, who's moving forward, and who's not. We also have many marketing vehicles. We have digital display ads. We advertise support radio stations, chambers of commerce, all in an effort to make sure that customers know that what's happening with their money, how can they access these programs and take advantage of these programs. Next slide. The last 2 slides were a request of the first town I presented to, which was the town of Yarmouth. They asked me to just provide information about supply rates. As I said earlier, customers have a choice in Massachusetts to choose their supplier. The Cape Light Compact is the supplier by default, and as I said earlier, we negotiate the terms and conditions of the contract. But customers can choose Eversource's basic service. They are also there as an option, or you can choose a competitive supplier. The Compact's rate right now is about 2 cents, over 2 cents lower than the utilities. There will always be opportunities for customers to potentially sign up with a supplier at the lowest rate. I just always ask customers, tips, never provide any information over the phone, always ask for contracts in writing, and make sure you read the fine print. Because frequently what happens is you get a teaser rate for 1 to 3 months or 4 months, and then it can switch into a spot market. And you can be caught, if you're not following this, you can be caught unaware and lose any of the savings that you might have made in those earlier days on the contracts. So again, be a smart shopper. You can always call the Cape Light Compact if you don't understand what a term or condition is, and we're here to help you to make sure that you have the best information to make good choices. Next slide. And this is just the history of the Cape Light Compact from 2002 right up through 2024. And you can see we are the green line. There have been 2 times back in the early 2000s where we were about a penny above the utility basic service, and in both times they were as a result of hurricanes. We were in the market to procure, we had to sign a contract, but prices were elevated because of 2 hurricane times that disrupted production in the Gulf of Mexico. And we've subsequently changed our hedging strategy, and it has produced and been very successful, resulting in the compact's rates over the 20-something years being lower than the utilities by over 70% of the time, with significant overall savings for ratepayers. And then the last slide is, because if you saw that, we might be lower than Eversource, but rates are still higher than they were many years ago. And I get asked, what's driving prices? Why are prices so high? So I'm going to talk at a very high level. Just some general information. On the left side of this slide is the Cape Light Compact supply. That's the price, the contract that we negotiate. So there are 2 things that drive up the price of electricity. The first is public policy. Massachusetts, the Commonwealth, has made a decision through the passage of the Green Communities Act, starting with the Restructuring Act, the Green Communities Act of 2008, 2018, and 2022, to pursue renewable portfolio standard, to include and expand and encourage renewable energy production. And they have charges that all suppliers have to meet. We have to have Class 1 RECs, we have to have solar RECs, we have to have different criteria that are built into the supply rate. And that puts all good things for the environment and climate, but it does put upward pressure on prices. The second is the price of natural gas. In Massachusetts, over 50% of the homes heat with natural gas, and the majority of our electricity is produced with combined cycle natural gas plants. So in the winter, you have 2 competing, and we have very, very constricted and confined, we're at the end of the pipeline. So putting new pipeline in a highly congested and developed area, not likely to happen. So when winter comes, and this is usually when you see your pricing spikes, we have to import LNG, liquid natural gas, and pipeline capacity constricted, increasing demand because more people, 50% heat with natural gas and electricity produced with gas, so you've got competing demand. And then you added the war in Ukraine, which we ended up, our LNG, which usually come into Boston, into Everett, we started competing with prices for Europe because it is a market. And our domestically produced LNG goes overseas because that is the best price that they can attain. So in order for us to get that LNG up here, we have to pay European prices as a result of what's happening overseas. So that's the supply at a very 35,000-foot level. On the delivery side, you have distribution, transmission, and public policy. We have had rate cases where we have, for good reason, upgraded our system, built a lot of infrastructure, substations, the battery storage out in Provincetown. All of those things have added cost to our electric bill, all needed and all great projects, but they add cost. And on the same time, they have public policy. We have smart tariffs, EV tariffs. Again, all of these things, though, may only be in mils or tenths of a cent. When you look at them collectively, they were not in place in 2002 to the extent and the amount that they're in now. And that is basically what has elevated our prices. It isn't all about energy. It's about, it is no silver bullet. There are a lot of, it's complex. It's a complex price, but that's what's driving our higher prices. And I think that was my last slide. And then just stay up to date with Cape Light Compact. You have great board members, and our offices are local. We live and work in this community, and our offices are in Yarmouth. So I have any,
Awesome.
open to any
Well, thank
questions.
thank you
was
very
great.
much, Maggie. It was great. Any questions or comments from the board?
Really helpful. Thank you.
Oh, it was great, wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. I guess we have mostly committee members here and staff.
Awesome. And again, anyone
but
who
thank
has
you, yeah.
questions about any of the loan products, they can always, follow up the numbers on your board packet, so they can give us a call.
Yeah, and
Thank
thank you for
you, and
coming.
nice
You
to
were
see you.
you were
Thank you.
here, what, 6 months ago or so, I think?
I can't remember.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's all right,
Was
wonderful.
it longer than that? Oh, because I got signed up for an energy audit right after you were here last time and had mine this summer.
Awesome.
And we got a bike,
Cool.
You're amazing.
so, yeah, it's awesome.
These are great
Thank you,
resources.
Maggie.
Thank you. And also, these are great resources too, just within the town to have for when we do kind of have residents come to the town looking for services to help plug them into things that are pre-existing and help them access that. So,
Right.
thank you.
Exactly. Thanks. All right, next we have a Climate Action Committee, Tom Mcnellis. Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you for giving me some time to give you a quick update on what the Climate Committee has been doing. And I've received some sage advice from our liaison, which I'll try to paraphrase. I think it was, be brief, be brilliant, be gone. At least I think that's what I heard.
Wow, that's true.
So next slide, please.
We should hold that up.
So I'm going to move quickly. I'm not going to talk to all the pieces here because I know you've had this, but I'm happy to go into any detail on any of the slides or the backups in any area that you're interested in. This is really the annual update, but it's also a chance for us to give you a little bit of insight into what we're doing on the Climate Action Plan. And then there's also a couple of requests in there on the Select Board charge to the committee, as well as release of the Climate Survey Report, which you may have had an opportunity to see in all of its 50 or so pages of glory in your board packet, so apologies for that. Next slide, please. So the goals that we've been working towards, next slide, please, were the result of what is now the second year of goal setting, and much thanks to Roberta Longley, who handed over the baton to me as the chairman, who started this a couple years ago. Really gives us a good focus. It's based on the charge and the things that we feel can be done that will benefit the town and the residents. And a lot of great work here because frankly I'm blessed to be working with a very great and talented and incentivized group of folks, many of them who are in the room tonight. And the real focus here is in the outreach to the community, saving the community money, helping the residents through the many wickets of what to do to get energy efficiency and what they can do for the climate. We're moving more towards now a climate action plan, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, which gives us a long-range prioritization of what can be done. Again, this is advice, so this would all be queued up as recommendations, but it gives us a chance to look at a long-term vision of that. There'll still be plenty of outreach to residents who have been very, very grateful for the types of things that we've been helping them with. So next chart, please. The key steps towards the Climate Action Plan, and I think a reason why the Commission agreed to help us with that is some of the background and foundational work that was done. The climate survey I'll focus on for a moment here. As I mentioned, that report, which is some 50-plus pages, done by some very, very great talent within the Climate Committee itself, who have background in this type of analysis and work. We tried very hard to keep it as a summary of findings. It's not meant at this stage of the game to give specific inferences and second-level ideas of what people might mean. We're just kind of presenting at this stage what it is that they did say. So it's a good voice of the community and overwhelming support for climate change. Now, there's many different ideas and many preferences on how to do that, and we're going to be working through a lot of that as we work through the Climate Action Plan. 421 survey responses received, so we're very pleased with that, and we're recommending release of the summary of findings on the Climate Action website. Okay, next slide, please. On the charter update, what we're requesting is that we add the word energy and add a few pieces in the charge about energy, because frankly, energy is not only equal to the greenhouse gas pollution, but it's also energy savings and dollar savings to the residents. This is consistent with practices across the Cape, and it opens up some additional channels for us in energy and climate meetings and gatherings and collaboration. So this doesn't mean we're not focusing on the greenhouse gas reduction. We still are doing that, but as I said, the energy is mostly the flip side of that coin. So that's behind this request. And the committee unanimously recommended that we present that to you for consideration. Okay, next slide, please. The Climate Action Plan is the next big step of what we're doing. We're really thrilled that Eastham has such a great strategic look and a strategic plan, and a lot of what we're doing here is really wrapping into the goals of the community and the direction that the community is going in, pulling in a lot of the very strong plans that have been done to date, such as the municipal vulnerability plan, the hazard mitigation plan, the low-lying street studies. All of that we're leveraging into the Climate Action Plan and bringing that into a prioritized list of recommendations based on what can be done, where are the best benefits, best benefits for the buck, but also perhaps just as importantly is lining up future grant opportunities because all this has to be funded. And then planning that out with Paul and the planning department over time as to when these sort of things could be done, should be done. Next slide, please. This one is kind of a hold your hats kind of slide. This is data from the commission, and there's some pretty shocking numbers that are in there. This is what they call the cost of doing nothing, and this is an assessment. This is a science-based assessment of damages to property or loss of property, as well as loss of tax revenue, based mostly on sea level rise. And in addition to that, I've added in the Eastham proportion of an interesting part of the study, which is the beach erosion. They've actually got statistics, and this is from the National Seashore only, not from the bay side. They've got statistics and studies that the National Seashore did on the economic impacts and benefits to the Cape based on the tourism that comes to the seashore. So this is based on the decreasing amount of seashore space over time. And again, it's all very interestingly researched and assessed. So clearly it's important for us to be watching and mitigating and adapting to that climate change that is going to be happening. Next slide, please. So one of the questions that we received was, well, what exactly is a climate action plan, and what does it do, and what could become out of it? So it's based on both adaptation and mitigation. So the adaptation side is, what do we do about hazards that are coming to us? And frankly, it's a really important piece of this because that's where a lot of the most vulnerable residents can get hurt. And a lot of this is looking at how do we prioritize things like conservation of ecosystems, emergency preparedness, the road network, and so that would all be wrapped in, again, drawing on a lot of the plans that have been done and drawing on a lot of the work that the Commission has developed over time. And then the flip side of that is the mitigation, work, and that's the greenhouse gas reduction work. Again, there's energy efficiency and work there related to reducing fossil fuel use. All this will be put together with the help of the Commission. The Commission has agreed to take this on as a project, so we're thrilled and very grateful to them for this. In fact, this work scope is something that Orleans, for instance, just went to town meeting this past month and asked for $100,000 to do. So this is something that, according to Shana, is worth about $100,000 for the technical expertise that they will do to bring into the town and work this. What we do ask is that the town support this. It's really important. This is not an effort by 7 volunteers on the climate committee. This is intended to be a tool for the town, a strategic planning tool, again, to look at what makes sense for the town, to do this locally grown, not something that the state's pushing on us, identify where we think is most beneficial to the town and where we can get money and grants to put into these types of investments. And a key to that is going to be, as I said, the town engagement. Okay, and in summary, we are recommending release of the draft survey report. We're recommending the wording changes in the select board charge, which you'll see in your packet. And then we're requesting engagement of the town and stakeholders within the town. We're going to be meeting with the commission on Thursday to go through the work scope, and then we'll be kicking off the plan in earnest in January with a goal of having it presented back to the select board in January 2026 for adoption. Okay, and that's, thank you for your time, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you.
And Jerry, hopefully I accomplished.
You were great.
Stellar.
You did great.
Don't be gone yet, Tom.
Don't be going yet.
Did you guys have another climate action plan as an example, as a benchmark to build your plan? Because this whole idea of adaptation and mitigation, I mean, this is a very, I think, pretty sophisticated way of looking at how to solve this. And what did you have examples that showed you some of this stuff? Or?
Good question. And of course, in the hierarchy, the state has done a plan, and then the commission did a Cape Cod plan. But those are all at different scopes, different scales. So what we did was we went out and we've been doing a lot of work in best practices of towns of our size to see what would be the right fit. Because there's a lot of things that we don't want to waste our time on. Not to say it's wasting our time, but as an engineer, I want to get to the meat of the matter. There's been a lot of good work in terms of what climate change is all about. We don't need to redo that. We want to get down to the specifics. So yes, there's the town of Acton, and they've been very gracious in talking to us on that. Town of Easthampton has a great plan. West Tisbury has a great plan. And so they're all going to, we've been talking to them, and we will leverage a lot of that good work.
Any other towns on the Cape that you're aware of?
Actually, no. There's been a couple of attempts and starts. Chatham is doing a plan, a very different approach. Truro pulled a committee plan together. But I think what attracted the commission to supporting us on this is that they'd like to do more of a facts-based plan grounded in things like the survey and the strategic plan and the greenhouse gas inventory, and making it very purposeful. And they hope this plan that they'll do with us will be a model for other towns on the Cape, because it hasn't really been done in this type of a scope.
Yeah, it was just, I think, first of all, it makes sense. It would be great to see wins and losses, like if one of those towns that you mentioned, Tisbury, for example, made a mistake and tried something that they didn't like. And so it'd be nice to see where things went right and things went wrong. But we're going to be number one on Cape Cod, I presume.
And we have been taking notes on what we thought was good and bad, and the expert from the commission will help us through some of that. They'll bring the best practices with them. And there was at least one town that I saw that recommended autonomous cars, and I really had trouble figuring out how that was going to help anyone.
Got it, thanks, Tom.
Awesome. Anyone else have any? Jamie?
Yeah. Thank you for the presentation. You know, there's no doubt that your committee does a phenomenal job with your dedication to this cause. You know, it's wonderful, and I'm glad that Eastham has this voice. One of my ongoing concerns, and I still kind of feel like it's not addressed with this plan, and I love the idea of Eastham being a forefront and, you know, in this type of thing. I just don't think it's the right time for our residents. I still am really reluctant to back any type of program that's going to add cost to the town, add cost to the residents, add a budget line for $100,000. Like, I can't support that at this time. I think that over the years since this committee's been started, one of the biggest things that I've been advocating for is education for our visitors and for our second homeowners on how fragile our ecosystem is, how compromised the erosion can be here. And the impact that those folks can have or not have on our environment, I think, is very immediate and very real. And that's within our wheelhouse to do, and to interact with these folks and educate them and work with them so that when they are building a second home, they understand why the groundwater is compromised, or if they are spending time here, they understand why it's important not to drive on dunes, or, you know, those are just broad examples, but it comes right down to everything from like using, you know, sustainable like forks and spoons to, you know, all of those things. And those have immediate impacts on Cape Cod. And those do really affect erosion versus, I agree that the broader change that needs to happen nationwide will also affect erosion and sea level rising. But, you know, what is going to benefit our residents? What's going to have the best cost-benefit ratio? And how can we do that in a way that doesn't put more financial burden on the working people in Eastham that are already under the most burden I've ever seen in my time on this board and in my time living on the Cape, which has been my whole life. So I really ask that the committee look at, you know, those types of programs also. The residents of Eastham do a lot, and they support a tremendous amount of green action in this town. And it's awesome, and I'm very supportive of it, but at the same time, we're not the only people here, and we're not the only people that are having a really significant impact on the ecosystem here. And so I guess for me, seeing that piece still missing is a little disappointing, especially when you're seeing some of the feedback from the survey dealing with, you know, worries about financial burden and like some of these broader projects and the impacts that it's going to have on the individual. I just think that piece doesn't need to bump out what you're doing, but it's missing. And it's attainable, and it's something that we could do in a way that doesn't have as much of a burden on the community financially. And it's just something that, you know, I feel like I need to put out there each time to consider. I think what you're doing is amazing. I think the workshops you hold are great, and the people that are able to do these types of programs, you know, are going to benefit tremendously from attending them because they're able to access programs maybe they didn't know about. And I think all of those are great. And I think that, you know, you're doing a phenomenal job. It's just that piece that I really am still kind of holding on to.
And thank you for that perspective,
Yeah.
because I think it's something important that we all need to continuously internalize.
Yeah.
And I'll say, first of all, I'm happy to say I'm not asking for $100,000.
Yeah.
That's paid for.
Yeah.
In terms of timing, you know, as they say, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The
Right.
next best time is tomorrow. So it's important that we get this started. And we're not suggesting that these are going to be bills that we're going to line up for the town to pay next year. This is a roadmap. This is a strategic plan, and it will be fit to what the town thinks is appropriate in terms of funding and availability of grants. And so that's another key piece, is that if we don't get on the bandwagon to get those grants, if we don't have a plan to show that we have ideas in place, we know what we want to do, we won't get the grants. And so that's going to help improve the town without putting the burden on the taxpayer. So that's a key part what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, no, I definitely, the grant piece, I agree, is definitely, having that plan in place so that we can access that those funds is definitely a wise move. It's just that historically, I feel like some of the burden has been absorbed by the town, and so I just want to know moving forward that that is something that is being looked at.
Absolutely, and it's not a foregone conclusion
Yeah.
that any of this is going to be paid for by the town. So that's part of the process.
Great.
Again, it's going to be, and we're just advisors. We're not a policy board, right? So we're going to say, here's things that we think based on examination of the best practices that could benefit the town. Here's where they could get paid for. And then the decision has to be made in conjunction with the town as to how that gets worked into a long-term plan.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jamie. All right, thanks, Tom.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, Tom.
Do
All
we
right.
need to vote on the updated charge?
Yeah, I was going to say, since
Yeah.
he's here, should we do the
Vote on that.
charge right now?
Do the charge?
Yeah.
Why not? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would, I guess, add to it is it has staff support as the town manager when it could be, maybe we could say town manager or representative, because right now it is Shayna.
It is Shayna.
It is Shayna, so town manager or representative would be
Okay.
my only
Yeah, what
addition.
page is that on? Let me-
115.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, we got a text after the packet came out that, nope, don't panic.
I said, don't
It's
panic.
Don't
the
panic.
climate action presentation and survey results, so it's fine. No, no.
That's why I spoke with them often.
Yeah, I really like the adding the energy piece though, too, because
Yeah.
it does allow you to broaden the scope on, what you're looking at. I think that's a great move.
Staff support, town
Yeah.
manager, or.
Yeah,
Right.
or representative, I think, just.
So what do we need on this?
Just a
We looking
motion
for
to
motion?
approve the new charge for the
I
Climate
move
Action
that
Committee.
we approve the new charge for the Climate Action Committee with the addition of staff support being town manager or its representative.
Second.
All right, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 4-0.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. All right, next we have a zoning update. Paul Lagg and Mary.
Got two for the price of one.
We need a Peter. Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Peter-
We're negotiating.
Negotiate.
Ah, rock, paper, scissors? Who goes first?
I'll begin tonight's presentation, and then we get down to some of the details. I'll ask Paul to take over the second half of this. This is an update. I'll try to be quick, since that's the message of the
It's the
evening.
theme, it's the
And,
theme of the night. yeah.
And I don't have a PowerPoint. So where do we stand as a task force? We've been working on the issues of the business district, we call it the DCPC, since August of 2023. Hopefully, we're one meeting away from being able to have recommendations on a couple products. The two products that you will see is going to be an updated zoning code for DCPC, and the second product, which will be a standalone product, is design guidelines or design regulations. Those will be separate. And we can talk a little bit about why we've separated them. But those are coming, and we hope to have those in proposed form certainly by January 1st. And then, let me just mention, this is a little off topic, but it's sort of work in front of the committee. When we realized that when the state passed the new housing law, they instituted legislation around ADUs. Our ADU bylaw is now in conflict with the state's law. Not substantially, but in a couple instances. One instance that the state law prescribes unit size at 900 square feet. We prescribe it at 1,200 feet. So that's a minor, we're considering that one of the minor differences.
That's a maximum?
Maximum, yes.
Wow.
And on
Maximum
and more significant one is that our bylaw is targeted specifically to year-round rentals. The state law, as it stands right now, only allows a limitation prohibiting short-term rentals, but does not speak to year-round rentals and restricting property in that way. We have talked to some state officials who said, oh yeah, we missed that.
Oh.
And we're hoping that we've been told over the next 3 months, or we were told initially December and now maybe February, that there is going to be a guidance document coming out to clarify the ADU legislation. There is going to be some advocacy that that guidance document allow restrictions such as the one we have in our bylaw. So what we've done to date is we've asked town council to look at our bylaw, the state's law, and please tell us where the conflicts are and what we would need to do to bring them in alignment. So we have that sort of in our back pocket. But what we want to do is hopefully over the next 2.5 months, get some greater clarification around this issue of restrictions. Either way, we probably should put this before the town this spring. And so we may be coming in, like in February, to say, here's what we know right now. And again, it's going to be, the state may make decisions later in the spring, and we'll just have to move quickly. But that's where that stands. And so it wasn't on our work plan, but we recognized it was going to be a problem. So we've done a little bit of homework, and we're going to kind of be in a wait-and-see situation. So that's with the ADU. Why are we sort of rewriting the current DCPC? Well, a couple things. It was adopted in 2017. Prior to strategic plan, the Tea Time Town Plaza, the marketing study, the transportation improvements, the concept of wastewater. I mean, we can go on and on and on.
But it led to a lot of
It
those
led to
things.
It led to a lot of those. However, the DCPC zoning right now does not necessarily accommodate everything that the town has proposed in those plans. For example, the way the Tea Time site is zoned, it does not match what the Tea Time existing proposal was. So we have that kind of thing. The other aspect of it is that the DCPC right now, as far as design, literally says we aspire to have a traditional New England village. Please see the Cape Cod Commission's bylaws, design guidelines. That's it. That's the only guidance in specificity. We have this aspiration of a traditional New England village without any definition as to what does that look like, what does that mean, and then we're referring to another organization's guidelines. So hence, that's why we spent a lot of time looking at what should the design guidelines be for the town of Eastham and having a second document. The reason we're having a second, well, I'll come back to that in a minute. I think the other couple timely pieces of this is that having spent about the last 19 months just like looking and examining all these parcels of land, we're realizing not only does the town have two major parcels in Tea Time and Town Plaza, but really the whole corridor, which runs from about Arnold's all the way up to the Wellfleet line, is really composed of much older, tired properties, of which we could anticipate in the coming years, whether it's next year or the next 5 years or 10 years, that as families who've owned properties and run businesses for generations may make some generational changes, or just physically the capital stock needs to be upgraded and replaced, there's going to be a lot of change. And what we want to have happen is that the vision, we codify the vision and the parameters that the town wants now, so that every time a new development proposal comes up, the town is not in a reactionary position, but rather we're informing people so that we're in alignment. And I think the final thing that we say is that it really is putting the town in a different posture. It has sort of been a somewhat laissez-faire, someone proposes and we sort of say, what do we think about it? And this is really doing, for this corridor, which is a very, defined space of land, what does the town want and how can we ensure that this happens? So it's a much more proactive stance in terms of just sort of sitting back and saying, let's see what comes our way. So that's why we're doing this. The process is really something we need to think about. Under typical zoning changes, as you all know, for the last 4 years, the task force has been making advisory opinions. There's a planning board public hearing. There's a planning board vote. There's a finance committee review. It comes back to the select board for decisions about whether it should be on the town meeting, the town warrant, and then the town votes. With the DCPC, that legislation prescribes several additional steps. There is a requirement that there be hearings, although no votes, but hearings with the Conservation Commission and the Board of Health. It also requires hearings and votes by the Cape Cod Commission and the
County commissioners.
just the Cape Cod Commission. So we have to queue this all up. The Cape Cod Commission has asked us to come to them before the planning board votes. So if there's any modifications that they're requesting, we have time to process that. In any event, we have several, formal legislative bodies that we need to go and get either approval or hearings through. In addition to that, we have talked as a task force about, and not that we're gluttons for punishment, but maybe a couple other sessions. These two documents are going to be substantial and they're going to be complex. And because we've gone from a traditional New England village to a lot of design details, it's going to be a lot to absorb. So one of the things that we were thinking about, if we get all of our reports and everything out by January 1, would be to have maybe a workshop with, and this is a workshop with, open to the Select Board, Planning Board, ZBA, and any other boards such as Conservation or Health or Climate Action or whomever that we think would be important to really think about this, to have a workshop where we can go kind of in deep. And even though you might hear it later in public hearings, believe me, I've looked at some of this stuff 100 times and it's not intuitive. You have to really get into it. So we would like your feedback tonight about that kind of a workshop in January. And also, similarly, should we do a community forum, say at the library, late January, early February, before we go to these sort of public meetings? So those are two additional pieces of process. Stepping back, that's a lot of process in January, February, March. And so I guess one of the things I would say just about the amending a DCPC, it's really involved, it's really complicated, and boy, do we want to get it right this time, because you don't want to do this every year. It's just impossible. And then let me, before I ask Paul to come up, let me just talk to you a little bit about the approach we've taken. And Bob knows this. Similar to past years, one of the things that we start our process with is, all those plans that we said weren't reflected in the current DCPC, we go through all of them. Because what we're trying to say is, what is the vision and what is the goals that the town has laid out? And how does the regulatory structure support that vision? We also had, these are separate projects, but they intersect and impact each other, whether it's wastewater, roadway planning, transportation planning. They all intersect with the land use planning. So while we're not zoning for those things, we're taking them into consideration as we think about land use. The other thing we had, we benefited from a lot of technical advice with consultants, both land use consultants as well as some of the landscaping consultants. We have had the Cape Cod Commission staff be part of our meetings for the last year. We've had a representative who's been almost at every meeting. I would say she's probably been at 85% of the meetings and kept a dialogue back and forth, because we did not want to go down this road and suddenly realize we were totally misaligned with the Cape Cod Commission. So we've done that. We've looked at lots of model bylaws and lots of design guidelines from towns both on the Cape and throughout Massachusetts. And we've seen case studies of other business districts. And the major concepts that, well, Town Council has not done a complete review of every word in these documents. We've been running the major concepts by her so that, again, we don't go far off track before we do that. And then finally, as part of the outreach, we've been, as a group, but Paul and the consultants in particular have been meeting with local businesses. We've met with many developers, other town planners, and we had a day-long charrette that was attended by about 35 people just about a year ago. So that's some of the outreach. And some of the key concepts, and Paul's got to touch on this, form-based code. How do you define form-based code? It's not really defining every aspect, but it's giving broad parameters and really adding definition to what does a traditional New England village look like for the town of Eastham. We have taken very concerted efforts to de-incentivize formula-based businesses. That was the first DCPC was developed really in reaction to little protection for formula-based businesses. So we've thought about things like signage, size limits, drive-throughs, things of that nature. Those are reflected in our recommendations. We have, and substantially, we have really, you'll see, we've tried to really explore and look at this issue of mixed-use development. As we think about the housing needs, in particular the rental housing needs, the year-round housing needs, the workforce housing needs, how do we integrate that with the development of the commercial district? And interesting, just a little sidebar, one of the, we've heard this from actually two of the developers, this notion of is housing an imposition to commercial development. What we've heard from developers between the cost of financing and the cost of capital, et cetera, is that commercial property is not profitable. Small-scale commercial property is not profitable. And in fact, they need the housing on the site to actually to pencil out the whole project. So it's sort of interesting. It's not an either-or, but really needs to be done together. So I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna just conclude. We've been in sort of at times mind-numbing detail, and had our heads into lots of bylaws and maps. But when we step back, and I can say when I step back, I look at this district and think that this town is really at an inflection point. Had we had the zoning, we wouldn't have had Cumberland Farms at that strategic corner looking like it looks. I mean, we might have had Cumberland Farms, but
Not like that.
maybe in a different situation.
Gas backwards.
Gas backwards, yes.
Love that.
But there's also, and we'll see this in the report, coming out of the charrette, the land use, the landscape architect worked very closely with Jackie and Paul to look at options for interconnected roadways. Those interconnected roadways open up a tremendous amount of economic opportunity and housing opportunities. And so we're not trying to prescribe what those are, but we're trying to offer the zoning that would allow those things to happen. So you'll see some sort of out-of-the-box zoning proposals. And again, it's to try to allow that to happen. And I would say that, with the zoning and hopefully some of the other infrastructure pieces put together, it will position this town to do some really comprehensive things. But again, as I started out, it will need to be very proactive and very strategic and very intentional. It won't all be realized by sitting back and sort of waiting to see someone show up. It will be necessary, and there's some things that, again, will go into the report, like just really looking at roadways and looking at zoning in the trade park. We sort of, after a year going, wow, we're missing a lot of development opportunity here, in terms of economic development, in terms of workforce, in terms of property taxes, in terms of lots of other things. So we're hoping that we can sort of frame all of this in the report in a way that will be, again, exciting to all of you. And like everything else, as our previous speaker said, we're advisory. And over the next 4 months, we'll have a lot of process and a lot of communication, and there may be things we have to tweak. We understand that. But I think we will be well-positioned with the state in terms of the money that is now available for planning and housing, if in fact we can get this all in place for town meeting. So with that update, Paul, do you want to highlight some of the specifics?
Well, I think, while he's on his way up, I think a couple of things you mentioned about having, outreach to committees and the public. I think that's when we did the DCPC, the first, round was great. Paul, I don't know how many presentations he did at the library, but there was not one question at town meeting because it was so comprehensive and,
And we did a couple here with the
yeah,
commission
and we
staff.
really kept it, consistent
Oh, yeah.
and accessible so that, people were informed about what was happening. And so I think that is key.
And I also think people went into it expecting there to have to be updates to it.
Exactly.
It was of no surprise that down the road there would have to be something like this.
I think we first heard of form-based code in 2018, probably the year after, that Paul kept saying, we're going to have to, outline this because we don't have anything right now. So,
Mary,
Another
one
question.
thing,
Go ahead.
can we, the state doesn't come out with guidance on the ADUs, and so we have to go down to 900 from 1,200. Think about trying to write it so there's a trigger if the state then changes its guidance, 1,200's there so that we don't have
Or we
to
just say it's in line with
go
the
back
state.
through it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but the
but
state
the
may
state
just
could just
put
put
it
it-
just as a guidance,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
not necessarily in
true.
line, but try and think of it as a trigger going back if they give different guidance, so we don't have to go through it again in the ADUs, that's all.
Okay.
And I had to piggyback on that. Any chance that the revisions are going to bring it up to 1,200? No, okay, so that one's locked and loaded.
Well,
I'm surprised.
that's not what they, I mean, the reaction, when I mentioned this, there was like, to the point of, we didn't mean to, the legislation wasn't intending to take away restrictions such as year-round housing, which we have in our current.
Right, no, I just wondered if there was going to be any other tinkering
Well,
that we
it
know
could be.
of. Right,
That's not
Okay.
my impression. but-
gotcha.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. So just kind of keying off what Amy was saying, I just wanted to reiterate that the stuff we're working on now is grounded in the last several years. And form-based code is the next logical step. And it's been something that's been recommended going back to 2016, when we had a technical assistance panel. And we had the DCPC and the Resilience by Design study that we participated in with the commission, and the T-time study, and the strategic plan this is an action item, and the regional policy plan from the commission that just came out last year. These are, everything that we're proposing is grounded in recommendations that have been forthcoming, or that have been, come forth in the past, and things that are right in the best practices for what we're seeing on the regional level. So I think we're in good, steady ground there, steady footing. So, again, form-based code, it's really the next logical step with the GCPC. And just real quick background, just to kind of remind everybody, it really deals with the zoning code that deals with the physical form of the buildings and the sites. It's less interested in the uses. And one of the recommendations that will come forth I should say, and it's really designed to be more user-friendly. So utilizing pictures and diagrams and clearer, more straightforward language. I mean, zoning is complicated, there's no way around that, but we're trying to streamline it so that it's something that an average person could at least get their head around the basics and know if I do this, if I build it this way, it's going to be in alignment with what the town wants, and hopefully a streamlined, simpler regulatory process. That's really what we're aiming. But like I said, form-based code is really, excuse me, focused on the physical form of the buildings and the site. And one of the recommendations we're going to come forth with is some changes to the use table. And I'm just going to go through kind of broadly the categories, just so you'll have a preview of what's ahead. So when you get and see the details later in the year, you kind of have a preview. So
Shocked.
conventional zoning really regulates, segregates the uses. You can do this use in this area, and there's not a lot of overlap. And that's actually the opposite of what we want to do, because we want to make a vibrant village center, and we want mixes of uses. We want restaurants and offices and people living and working and playing in this area. So we want to streamline the use table, consolidate a lot of the categories into fewer, broader categories. So really, because the majority of things fall under retail, sales and service, industrial, general office, those types of broad categories. We are still going to keep some specificity because we want to be careful to prohibit things that we absolutely don't want, so that there is no sort of loopholes or ambiguity. So, so some consolidation, but also some specificity on prohibited uses. And again, that's just to foster a mix of uses in this village center. We are trying to propose things that will incentivize more active uses, so kind of controlling active uses where they would be on a site. So we're going to redevelop the site. We want the restaurants and the stores to be at the front of the site, facing the street, not tucked away in the back. Residential uses, more like an office space that doesn't have any foot traffic, those things should be at the back of the lot or on the second floor, things like that. So this, these zoning codes are going to have recommendations that try to specify that. And again, more clarity, more specificity makes it clear for the developer. There'll be fewer misalignments. So building types, I said, this code focuses on the form. We're really trying to foster and incentivize what is called the missing middle. You might have heard that term. Those types of housing units that not sit between a single-family home and a large apartment complex. So ADUs, duplexes, townhouses, top-of-the-shop apartments. Those are the types of housing unit, multifamily, that we're trying to incentivize and make sure that you can have them spread throughout the district. And that's what contributes to, again, a more vibrant village center. So part of that is, the way we incentivize that is to offer, and we'll be proposing, density and height bonuses for certain types of mixed-use buildings. So if you're going to have a mixed-use building and you're going to have residential on the second floor or the upper floors, if it's going to be a year-round rental or affordable, deed-restricted affordable, or a seasonal workforce, you would get the benefit of being able to go a little bit higher and have more units. And again, and the feedback we got, that makes it pencil out better for the developers, and it's an incentive or a way for them to pencil it out, but it's an incentive to promote that kind of development. We're also targeting limiting unit sizes, individual unit sizes for multifamily, to curtail large luxury style apartments and townhouses. And again, and another piece of that we think is kind of innovative, and we got a lot of good feedback from the developers, actually, was limit the individual unit sizes, but then allow for an average unit size in a multifamily building. So it allows the developers to put some larger units in where they could make some more money, sell for, or rent for higher. But the overall average of all the units is going to be in the more smaller, moderate. And that, we hope, will kind of regulate the affordability level and make these buildings more.
What is that? Do you have a rough idea of what that square footage would be?
There's a little fluctuation in the sub-districts, because if if you recall, there's different sub-districts in the whole corridor, so they range from 600 to 800, thereabouts. That would be the average. So again, you could have some larger ones and some smaller ones, but on average. So it's actually something we got a lot of good feedback on. So these are little tools that we're trying to bake into the regulations that kind of force the development that we want to see, the development that we need in the community. But we also think that they're viable as far as what the developers have given back feedback on. So again, incentivizing those height and density bonuses, promoting by right residential uses for multifamily. So again, this is in alignment with really what the ADU bylaw is about, is not requiring a discretionary special permit, making it easier. So you have a right to the use. You still have to go through site plan review, and you got to follow that recipe, make sure the building is designed and the site and everything we want, but you at least don't have to go into a board and justify the use itself. And that's a huge thing, and that's something we heard a lot from the developers, that you take that issue off the table and let's just focus on the site itself and what it's going to look like. And then, again, alignment with form-based code, the form and not the use. The proposals are also going to include a lot of specificity on architectural standards, so roof forms, materials, facade articulation, make sure we don't have big blocks of box stores, building height and size limits I mentioned. And it's not a strict prescriptive architectural detail like you would see in a historic district. Still a lot of flexibility with, we're not dictating exactly, but just making sure that there's aesthetically pleasing mix of materials, so you have different, again, articulation, facade variation, so forth, and that, related to the roofs and the walls and the facade. Landscape standards, adding specificity into requirements for vegetative buffers. There are going to be areas in this corridor where we get the commercial corridor bumping up to people's backyards, especially Town Center Plaza, backs up to Dory Lane. We want to make sure that we, account for that. So we have vegetative buffers, step backs. So again, I mentioned these height bonuses, which we think are great, but you don't necessarily want a taller building right up against someone's fence looking at. So we again bake into the recipe for the form-based code. You can have some of these height bonuses, but you got to step the building back and have the vegetative landscape buffer and all these things to try to smooth out transitional areas. So these are all items that will be in the proposed regulations. Parking and transportation. So Mary mentioned the opportunity for new connections, and this is a huge part of the DCPC purpose and intent. What we're going to include in the proposal is a regulating plan. It really outlines the transportation network. Identify, we know where the existing roadways are, but where can new secondary roadways go in? Where can bike paths go, pedestrian connections? And really what we're looking at is can we build out a secondary Main Street, a connection, a link between Brackett Road running through Teton, and work with the property owners on that. We'll be focused on Brackett Road itself. That's really where we envision the classic Main Street, where over time, and again, this is a 20 to 25-year window, things are going to happen progressively over time, but properties get redeveloped, the buildings move closer to Brackett Road, we have sidewalks and street trees, the parking's in the back, that classic Main Street look. We can accomplish that on Brackett Road. Route 6 is a different animal. It's always going to be that highway corridor, but we can have it as more of a hybrid with the transportation improvements, the sidewalks, so forth, and the better site layout. And then possibly this other Main Street that runs parallel. And the other really key piece is a connection to the end of Holmes Road, possibly back out to Route 6. And this is actually something that came up years ago in the original Main Street back in 2007, and we're trying to revive that, because that whole area is really the area that we think we can accommodate a little bit higher density, residential and mixed use, and also expansion of the trade park. And those two things may seem a little not in alignment, but that's what we're trying to figure out, is if you have the proper site layout, the architectural details, these things can coexist, so we can expand the trade park, have some mixed use, have some higher density residential. It's away from Route 6. There's an alternative route that's not putting pressure all on Route 6 to deal with the traffic, and we think these things can blend together well, and that's really going to be the backbone of where, we can only do so much on tea time and town center that the town controls. We need a lot more residential units, and those have to come from non-town, those come from the private property, so we have to plan for that and put the regulations in place in the framework, so when folks come in and want to do these developments, we know it's going to be, we can handle a little bit more density, a little bit more height, knowing that the form and the site layout's going to be controlled and it's going to look appropriate. What else did I want to mention? So, again, requirements for pedestrian connectivity, the street network, building out over time, some flexibility with parking, the ability to have parking reductions, because that's a key piece of form-based code. We don't want giant parking lots. We over-prescribe parking. We don't necessarily have to do that, especially if we're saying we're going to have bike connections and make a more walkable, user-friendly area. So those are all things that are baked into the proposals. And I guess lastly, I mentioned this is a 20, 25-year plan when you look at the whole expanse. Some things are going to come in quickly, but as we know, it's going to take time for these properties to redevelop, figure out what they want to do. It's not going to happen overnight. And the next phase of this work is really going to be the zoning's in place, the framework, then we have to go out and really work with the community, facilitate these discussions, get the property owners, the adjacent property owners talking to each other, get these ideas flowing so they understand, like, oh, wow, we could partner, we could redo our site, have shared parking. All these things need to be, need some helping hands and some pushing. So that's really kind of the next phase after the zoning's done. And again, this is really tied really closely to wastewater and the Route 6. So as Jackie and I keep saying, all of these things, it's kind of a giant knot that you gotta untangle all at once. You gotta pull all the strings, get untangled, and straighten it out, and it all has to happen together. So I guess I'll leave it at that. Broad concepts, again, you'll see when we do the workshops, we'll get into the finer details, but we just want to make sure the board is aware broadly of the kinds of things that we're going to be proposing. Happy to answer any questions.
Look forward to it.
Did I miss anything
Workshopping.
important?
Just a point we didn't make. The current DCPC is, you mentioned it's 6 sub-districts, but one of the, from the original DCPC, and we've talked a lot with the commission about this, the intention, the strategic intention, was to take the core commercial district and allow the most density. Transitional is slightly less, and then you get to limited commercial and you get to office residential. We are not proposing changes to that strategy, which is why when you see the densities and the variations, we are assuming that we're going to really start at the core commercial. And we've learned, for example, with wastewater, in the limited commercial, which is really at the tail ends of this, there's a heightened sensitivity on the part of the Cape Cod Commission about overdevelopment there. But also the wastewater, for example, at one end, the limited commercial is part of the watershed. So, I mean, all of these things start to impact one another. So those are just some of the considerations we've put in place.
It's a lot to, got a lot of plates in the air going. All right, Bob?
Just a quick comment. I know how excruciating the detail is with you guys. And I'd be curious to see how we would package that. I mean, first of all, the feedback sessions are a fantastic idea. That's really important. But then, packaging that for a warrant without getting, just so complex people lose themselves, that's going to be interesting. But it's a very important job that you guys are doing. I just wanted to commend you on it. It's really, and I do understand how difficult it is.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Amy, if I could say, I think we were just at a housing workshop and had to do a presentation, and I think there's no doubt in my mind after sitting in that room with every town and discussing the topic of housing deeply, that this zoning task force, from the DCPC to the zoning task force to everything we're doing now it is tedious and it's long, hard work, and they've spent so much time on it, but it is the single most important thing that we're doing. And
Absolutely.
we got into this mess of no housing through zoning, and we're going to have to rezone our way out of it, also in an environmentally sensitive way, so.
All right, well, thank you both for
Lucky.
all your work, really. You're doing great work.
Group, yeah,
Yeah.
the whole committee,
Very
yes,
And Carolyn, too.
yes.
Lots of other, got 3 or 4 other
Yeah.
people who 3-hour meetings of excruciating pizza.
Thank you.
Glad to be on
All
the
right.
select.
We're going to move on to budget update.
I thought my time was past.
Sorry.
It was,
Oh,
we
you're
passed
done.
it.
Sorry.
We're past it, yes.
Go ahead, Rich.
I'm not going to get into a lot of detail, just a couple things, and if you just go to the next slide, please. We do have a timeline and a budget schedule, and I do have to make a little progress. I'm working with Mira this week, get all this on our town meeting and budget website page to get all these things up there this week, hopefully, as we enter the budget season. But we have a timeline, which I think I've distributed to you in the past, and the Finance Committee is working on that basis of that timeline. And we're on track, so we're doing great. And down the bottom, you see, or I guess in the middle, capital budget requests have been updated, and our draft capital budget and 5-year plan is complete. I'm going to distribute that draft to the Finance Committee and meet with them on Thursday, and it'll also be on the website. So as we start heading budget season, we knock out the capital piece first, and then move on to the operating budget at the beginning of December, which is well along. The next step of that is Jackie and I get together after the holiday and start balancing the pieces, parts of all of it. And there's a couple of key points I want to advise you about now, just so when you see it draft in January, you kind of had a heads up. So next slide. Before we get into those details, just a couple of key factors. As a reminder, you'll recall 2 years ago, we approved collective bargaining agreements at town meeting, and kind of a not unique, but a thing that not a lot of towns do, but we took the approach that if we're going to ask town meeting to approve collective bargaining agreements, we're going to attach the cost of those agreements to the article and ask for that money at the same time, on the premise that if you don't like that cost, now's your time to say no.
Right.
But that being said, when we come to agreement, we advocate for that passage, because that's the negotiation process, right? You've both come to, it's our obligation to try to get passage at town meeting, but it is fair for the town meeting to know the cost of them. And so the promise on that was, if you fund the override for these collective bargaining agreements, we shouldn't need an override, at least related to salaries, for 3 years. So this is the third year, FY '26, of that, unwritten agreement. Of course, it didn't apply to, shift in school spending and special education costs last year, or anything new or above what we normally do, which is what the situation was last year. That being said, the salary piece of it is pretty much on target, so I think we did a good job in estimating and projecting the cost of that contract and the salaries associated with it and the positions that are baked into that. The problem is, lots of other things have changed, which is going to make this fiscal year a challenging year to balance the operating budget. But before, and that's what I'm going to talk to in just a second. But first, we also had closed our prior fiscal year '24, and I did do a presentation to the Finance Committee last month on the year-end results of that. That too will be on the website on the budget page, so people can see that year-end financial presentation. And we are expecting a pretty healthy free cash. Unfortunately, we got, just today, got a notice from the Department of Revenue that because they're so backed up with work log and setting tax rates for other communities, that we're not going to get our free cash certified till January. But, we're astute enough to know about what we're going to get. And so we're looking for about $5.6 million, which is my estimate. Which is a great result for the town of Eastham, but there's a couple of things that go into that. A lot of that about 1.2 million was carried over from last year because we keep part of our financial policy, we keep a reserve from year to year in our fund balance. 4.4 million was what was generated from fiscal year '24, which 1.4 of that was from short-term rentals. So it's $3 million if you exclude the short-term rentals was generated from FY '24 activity, which still is a good result for us. And the presentation I did to the Finance Committee on the year-end results kind of indicates all of the reasons why we got that money. So it'd be good to, it's all consolidated into a slide presentation. So loosely, this is what I'm thinking as we're going into our budget. Jackie and I start deliberating over the budget. Because of the short-term rentals we're reserving for wastewater, about 1.375 would go to our wastewater reserve. As you know, our capital plan, which I'm discussing this Thursday, is largely funded by free cash. And we try to do that to avoid borrowing, which has significant costs to us. So this year, the capital budget looks like it might need an order of $2 million, which means we have a little bit under $1 million of free cash unallocated that we could use for other projects if needed or as needed. So now I'm going to get into the challenges of what's coming up ahead of us. We've estimated revenue growth for the upcoming year, and that is coming in right about 3%, which is about $1.1 million of new revenue. Unfortunately, expenditures growth continues to be at a higher rate, at 4%. And so it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that, that inevitably you reach a point of equilibrium because we're required in Massachusetts and in town here to have a balanced budget. We can't deficit spend. So based on that, though, and based on the override from a couple of years ago, we do expect to come in with a balanced budget within our tax levy without an override on our town operating. This is where we're hoping to land. But I want to point out a couple of challenges, and that's the next slide.
I heard no override, right?
That's what we're trying for. Yep.
On the operating budget,
And the cap.
Well, and
well,
capital.
and the capital, but, yeah, there might be a school issue.
Yeah, I
We
can't
don't
speak
know
for the
about that, yeah.
schools. So here are some key elements that to keep an eye on, and when you see the full presentation, we'll see how this finally shakes out. But if we have $1.1 million of new revenue, there's some core accounts that typically eat up that new revenue, and these are them. Step increases and COLA increases are about 3.8%, $450,000, but those are covered by the previous actions we took. Waste disposal, though, is significantly increasing.
Is that just the fees, or is it is it volume, too? Do we have more
A
volume?
little bit more volume, but theoretically, we get fees for volume. We charge as in addition to having to pay. So it's a balancing act, and so that's something I want to look at because you have a fee hearing coming up, and I don't know if it would be, a good time to do it or not. We just did fee increases. But we just got, within the last few weeks, a contract renewal from Covanta, which is now something else, so I don't know that name yet, but.
That's where we take our trash.
And their tipping fee. And in addition to the tipping fee that we pay to dispose of the solid waste, the transportation costs are skyrocketing as well. So
Is that C&D, too? Is that increasing also, or?
yes, but it's mostly the municipal solid waste that's the
Okay.
factor. So that's going up at a rate of 43%, $175,000. Health insurance, at the moment, that is, and going back to the year-end review that I did, the Finance Committee, if you looked at the slide that showed where we generated free cash from, the biggest generator of free cash, which is typical for most towns, is in our health insurance line, because it's a potentially high volatile account. Normally, I would expect this year's rate to go up about 8%, but since we had such a huge surplus in that account, I'm only budgeting it tentatively at about 3%. So it's going up 140,000. It's going up the amount of our revenue being produced, but it really ought to be going up more. What I'm doing is utilizing some of the surplus that's in there. And that's important for you to know. I'm pointing that out to you into the Finance Committee because if we rely on free cash to fund our capital plan, this is eating into the amount of free cash we're generating, meaning the following year, we might not have that free cash for our capital plan. And so you start squeezing yourself. Utilities, we are expecting 10 to 20% cost increases, but we have put in a lot of energy efficiency improvements, and I won't go into them tonight because I know you're tight on time, but we've done some great work. And so we're going to hold the line and just go up nominally on that. And we do have a little bit of surplus in that account as well. Pensions continue to go up at about 5.6%. Software licensing is just getting a little bit crazy. We're doing a lot of things to save a lot of money in IT. Again, I'm not going to go into it because you're tight on time, but at some point I'd like to tell you a lot of the good work we're doing in the IT department. One of the things that one thing I will tell you, because we're working on it right now, is we got notice, really short notice, so it's wasn't a great situation, that our phone system is going to be no longer supported. And we'll be reaching end of life by our vendor. And so luckily, the contacts that we know and our outside IT provider is really connected. We think we have a good deal on the hook, that we get all the hardware replaced at no cost, but we will have to shift to and this is the way of the world in IT for everything, so it's not surprising, a per phone, per month subscription basis service. But the good news, as opposed to a license, it's not like in the good days when you bought a copy of Microsoft Office and you could put it on every computer even though you weren't supposed to. You know, you can't do that anymore, because you got to buy every instance of it. But that has caused us to re-examine how do we utilize things like phones.
Yeah.
And so we've whittled down, at this point, at least 40 phones that we're not going to be replacing and saving on that money.
We're going with walkie-talkies between buildings.
Right.
Well, and what about cell phones? I mean, or a lot of staff have cell phones, I assume.
Those aren't cheaper, though.
It's not cheaper.
So, I mean, that's just an example. So we think we'll be able to get this new phone system in by the time we're said and done, that we're looking at our operation and negotiating with a couple of vendors and trying to get a good price, that will be budget neutral on that after all that's said and done.
Because you look at, residential phones, and nobody has a
Right.
landline anymore.
Right. So part of it's culture
Eventually it'll be
and
gone,
retraining people.
Yeah.
Some things are tough, on public safety. Somebody shows up, you got to have, someone calls the fire department, that department staff 24/7.
Right.
So. The long and the short of it, though, is just these accounts alone account for just about $1 million of cost increases before we really even start. And now I got to work with all the departments of all the other things I think they need increases for, and do we really need those things? And if you do, can we move things around within the budget to accommodate them? So it's very tight, and I see there to be determined. I have touched base with the schools, and sped costs are not moderating from what we were hearing last year. So hopefully.
We didn't expect that, because the students were still there.
That's what we
Right.
did an override and not a,
Yeah, but do we know numbers? October 1 numbers, are we still, our percentage going to grow? Or are we?
Our percentage is going to, for percentage participation in each of our districts is about the same, maybe a very slight drop. And that's actually going to be part of the, I have that information, I actually charted it out to distribute to the Finance Committee and yourselves. So that's a detail we'll get into.
It's not a 2x4 in the face.
Whereas last year, we had I forget what it was, like a 2% or 3% increase in
Yeah,
participation.
it was a hit, yeah.
So, and next slide, or is that it?
That's it.
Is there one more slide?
No, that's
we didn't
it.
have one more. That was our last one in the packet.
So that's the quick update.
Thank you.
Is any questions? Like I said, after the holiday, the budget and town meeting website, page on the website, will start getting populated and updated with all these presentations I've done, the capital budget. And we will also be putting together budget books for the Finance Committee, starting with, we'll get you a 3-ring binder, starting with the capital budget. When other presentations comes out, we'll put those in there, and when the operating budget comes out, we'll put that in there, so everybody on the Finance Committee has a binder. And we'll also do the same for the Select Board if you choose to want a binder.
Okay, thank you. And also, this is great that you have a page with budget information. Get that out, social media, because there's always, somebody in May, we didn't know any of this was happening.
One of the things I'm trying to coordinate with Kayla is I do want to do some, whether they're coffees or just lunch and learn type of things with the
Great.
community, at least, probably 3 times or so before January. So start priming people
Great.
for, why things cost what they cost. I mean, let them come in and ask the questions. We got lots of great answers, most of which are pretty common sense and logical. Some may be a little subjective, but require a little bit of talking out, but.
Yeah. I mean, everybody understands at home, things are more expensive, so,
Well, that's the thing.
The
We're all
town-
getting
the towns
squeezed.
aren't
The town is
special,
the
yeah.
same,
yeah, so. All right, any other questions for Rich, or? No? Thank you very much.
Very good.
All right, we have some license renewal applications real quick. You want to just
I can move
Have
them
we-
all, yeah.
yeah.
read them
move
down the
all there.
line, and then we'll vote?
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve all license renewals as listed in the packet.
Ooh.
It's a nice one.
Second.
All right. We had no complaints or
Any-
anything.
any
on these.
more
No
discussions?
complaints or anything on these
No.
things, they're all the same?
Everything looked the same to me, so.
Looks like the same.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 4-0. All right, accepting donation for the police department.
What was
yeah.
that?
Someone who wishes to remain anonymous has donated over $10,000.
Quite generous.
Is it for something specific?
No,
Yes.
Yes.
It's for the computers and the cruisers, something like this.
No, I don't,
Where was
oh,
it?
jeez.
I couldn't find it.
I don't
What's
have,
it
there it is, yeah.
What page, Jer?
2,045? No, I'm kidding. Sorry.
It's on page 160.
Okay.
160?
Better now.
yeah,
160, okay. I was almost there.
Oh, there it is.
AED.
AD.
Yeah, the
Equip our
Oh,
police.
okay.
defibrillators.
Great, that's great.
$10,000.
I'll make a motion
$10,600.
to accept the donation of $10,600 for funds to purchase new AEDs to equip our police cruisers.
Second. Nope.
Ooh, tie.
That's what- give it to-
All right, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 4-0. All right, lease to locals.
Yay, okay, good.
See you back there, Rachel. Trying to hide.
Rich is going to start.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and Rachel, you should probably come up to get some credit. Rachel's worked really hard. I put her through the paces, but she's been a great resource in getting us where we are. You've heard about the Lease to Locals program before, I believe, so I'm not going to get through that background. We're getting into kind of the nitty-gritty of what does it actually look like. We're working on an RFP, which is substantially complete, but before we got too far ahead in issuing it, I don't mind issuing it without you having it, because we can always change things, but, we want to make sure you're at least on, relatively on board with how we see the program working. So the kind of the key thing to keep in mind when we go through this, that, and hopefully I'm not speaking out of school when I say it this way, but this isn't an affordable housing program. It's a rental unit creation program.
Inventory.
And
Increasing.
if you're increasing those rentals, hopefully a side effect of that, or an impact of that, is it also creates affordable housing, because, again, creating the unit is the important thing, because lots of people that have means might be living in a affordable unit that otherwise could go to an affordable person. So if you moved up the market, so to speak, and even if it costs them more, but they can afford it, now they've opened up that space for someone that can't afford the new rental at the higher rate. So keep that in mind as we go through the regulations. And the other thing I want you to keep in mind is this is a subsidy to the homeowner to create a new rental unit. This isn't going to the tenants.
Right.
People confuse that, and I think that impacts their thinking on some of these regulations sometimes.
No, it's an incentive to the owner to rent it,
Right.
release it.
Not short term.
Full-time, right, year-round.
And Carolyn's here, and, we did plan to go to the Housing Trust. We want to give them an update, too. Unfortunately, the meeting had to be canceled, but we'll close the loop with them at the next time. And- Great. So what you had in the packet is some proposed regulations. This is modeled after similar regulations for Provincetown and Nantucket, with some differences. And I'm not going to read through these regulations. I'm going to kind of point out the differences and maybe the key things that perhaps you ought to consider as talking points. The main thing that this is different from other communities is this is a subsidy, and if you go to page 2, at the top, subsidy amounts for specific rental units. A studio, a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and a 3-bedroom or more. We don't have room rentals.
Right.
We want it, and again, that could be a talking point. Provincetown does allow room rentals, and I think it's perhaps more pervasive there. Not that room rental is bad and doesn't provide housing for someone who may need housing, but we're trying to create units with the hope here that once you get this subsidy and you do a year-round rental and hopefully have a positive experience, that you're going to continue to rent that unit on a year-round basis in lieu
But
of.
the subsidy is just a one-time. They don't
Yes.
get it every year.
So we had
was my
according to
question,
what
right.
a vendor that provides services to Provincetown and Nantucket, what was the retention rate? Something like 70% or 75%?
Yeah, 75.
It's a
retention
one-time
rate.
subsidy.
But once you get used to it, it's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a way to test it out. Yep, great.
We kind of felt that creating a whole rental unit was more likely to retain
Than a
that
room.
75%,
Yeah.
whereas a room,
Yeah,
that you might just get sick of having a roommate, or you did it for a couple of years, and now you're ill and don't want people around you, or.
I hear more seasonal people doing that for seasonal
Yeah,
workers. renting
So
a room
if that's
out.
of interest to the select board, I think there's certainly merit to that, but
Yeah.
perhaps
I
that's a
think-
different program.
Workforce.
Yeah.
yeah. I think right now, just focusing on
Seasonal
this and
workforce.
seeing
Seasonal workforce, yeah.
how that is received makes sense, and then considering expansion down the road if we feel like there's a need, but I
Right.
don't think it's the same need here as you
How
might
do we
see.
fund it, Rich?
Well, we have the article from a few years ago that's unspent.
So we're funding the pilot this way.
Okay.
And so it's existing funds to come, it'd be about $450,000 of that $900,000 article. I don't know if they'll take the whole 450, but,
And the trust may subsidize some of it for, to get those rentals in a more income-friendly bracket.
and so that's part of what we have to talk to the trust about. So you'll see in a second, we have some high AMI limits, which I want to talk about. But to the extent it's income qualifying at 100% or less of AMI, perhaps that's something the trust might be interested in, so we can get more units.
The person could conceivably take advantage of the trust's existing rental
Subsidy.
subsidy program and the,
So it would
And
be
the
on both
owner,
ends.
The
and the
owner
owner would take care, yeah,
Yes.
gotcha. Okay,
so it could be
yeah.
a double program.
So that's kind of a segue into the next thing that's different from Nantucket and Provincetown. It's conspicuous by its absence here. There's no mention of rental caps. And so that was an interesting decision. And again, Rachel and I went back and forth on all these points, and feel free to comment on any of these. I just don't know, are we making something an issue that's not really an issue? And that some of the feedback we got when we talked to others that are running this program is that perhaps as much as 17%,
Yes, they were over 17%.
they were paying out 17% more than what they were planning on paying out, because every rental magically is at the cap.
Off of the cap.
Cap, but
So if you rent a 2-bedroom, you can't charge more than
I
$2,500.
And they're all renting it.
But they're all at
2,500.
They're right at the cap.
Because you're kind of saying, well, that's what, that's what you should be
Right.
renting.
If we-
Money on the table, yeah.
And you're pegging that rent to someone's income, where the rent really ought to be based on the type of
what you're
unit you're
getting,
getting,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
And we didn't want to persuade, I mean, not that this likely is going to happen, but you never know. If you have a nice unit that's, has got a water view and you want to charge a premium, why do we care if it's high rent, if someone can afford to pay that? Again, if you're a renter and you're in a unit that someone else might be able to afford, and you want to go to a more expensive one, it's creating that rental unit and freeing up housing.
Right, but also creating levels of housing too. You know what I mean? I think that's the important piece that I think you're saying, is that there's layers to housing, and that's the part of diversifying
Diversity,
housing that, we're missing and trying to do with this.
Right.
I think it makes sense.
So that leads me to the other key point you'll see in here, where it says for qualifying tenants. And so we have to go through some of that criteria. But I'm going to say the last, or maybe it's the first one first, I guess, but an AMI requirement. And I struggle with this a little bit, but we have a pretty high AMI requirement. You're eligible up to $250,000, 250% of your area median income using the CPA. And just to make it easy, I put the chart at the back, so you can just, at the very bottom, you can see what that means based on different size households. But if you're a couple, you're married or, boyfriend, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, 2 people, you can make up to $245,400. So you could have,
Or 214. Oh, no, that is 245, yeah, sorry, I was looking at the wrong column.
so when I talk to other towns about that, they're like, oh, we can't sell that, that's too high, no one's going to want to do that. And this is why I mentioned, this isn't going to the tenants. This isn't paying these people making this money.
Yeah.
We're paying the homeowners to make their unit available so those people can rent it from
Somewhere.
them and free up another unit they may be in.
Rent
It's
it
a-
to a nice couple as opposed to
Yeah.
25.
Or someone
summer
wants to move
rentals.
here and take their time in buying a house, and they're going to rent
Exactly.
for a year, or,
And so, to me, the AMI is not, a lot of times I think housing people do these programs and they immediately think that 250,000 is a high AMI, but again, we're not paying the tenant.
They're paying me,
We're trying to create rental units. And so we want people to be able to participate in that program.
And give the homeowner enough of a, array too, that they can fit whatever, if they have a 6-bedroom house,
yeah, and
See what they can
instead of
do.
renting it for 2 months a year for exorbitant amount of money, renting it for a fairly high amount year-round, like you said, if it's a water view or
Step.
nice,
Yeah.
it's
That's a
gonna-
great idea.
Yeah, and it's all going to depend upon funding, and the town is going to look at, we're going to look at what the
benefit.
experience is on this and decide, it's almost an annual,
right,
an
you're
annual
gonna have
look.
another decision,
Yeah.
yes, to make,
Well,
once
it's
we
even
get
more-
some data.
It's even more than annual, honestly. I mean, I think it's been the experience of the other communities that have done this, that they make course corrections as they go when they realize something happens that they didn't intend. You can adopt a new regulation, a new rule, and put that in place at any
Right,
time.
yeah. One question I had, we were always worried about existing rentals. On your first page, when you talk about housing unit, the eligibility, deed restricted and subsidized units, properties are not eligible for participation in the program. I understand what that means in the sense of subsidized programs, similar to what the Affordable Housing Trust owns and what the Eastham Housing Authority has. They're not eligible. How does this apply to Nauset Green?
They're not eligible,
They're not eligible because they're
a subsidized housing.
subsidized? Okay.
And also, 2C, Jerry,
2C?
it must be a new rental.
New rent,
Can't be
thank you.
Existing. yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So it couldn't have it.
So in other words, we're really targeting this to get new rentals.
Get something opened right now that's
Yes.
not.
The prime target would be current short-term rentals that could be long-term rentals.
Yes.
And if
So
this
you're
little,
saying new long-term rentals, when you
Yep.
say new
It's-
rentals,
it-
that's
The new
important
rental
to-
is,
Yeah.
it's not a long-term rental at this point in time.
Right,
maybe that should say
Say
new
new
long-term
long-term
rental.
rental. Yeah, I was just thinking that. Yep.
oh, yeah, see, every time you look at these, you find
Or
something.
new annual, maybe.
I mean, it defines what it's saying in there, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
it's clear when you say new long-term.
Yeah, but that way someone won't just write it off like, oh, I've already been renting, so.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's true.
Carolyn has,
Carolyn, can you come up to
Yeah, would you
a
mind?
mic for me, please? Thanks. So-
we have comfy
we-
chairs.
We,
Yeah,
Well, they're better.
sorry.
Oh, my thing just went,
is it on,
Right.
Carolyn?
yes. I'm doing this from memory because I saw it there.
That's right.
In the introduction, there's a phrase about rentals that should say new rentals.
Oh,
Again, emphasizing,
the goal of the program is to increase the supply of new long-term housing?
Or
Yes.
year-round housing, yeah.
yes.
Year-round
Please.
rental opportunities.
New approach,
New,
increase the
yeah.
supply of new long-term housing available
Okay.
to residents, okay.
A lot of those things in here are pretty standard things that I think you would expect to see. I'm not going to talk about them. But under 4, in addition to the 250% AMI issue, you cannot be a blood relative of the property owner.
Oh, yeah.
And you must meet one of the following criteria, 4C. And this is, again, open up for your discussion, but I'm trying to point out the highlights here. An Eastham resident at any point in the last year,
Or an
It should be
employee
more
of?
year.
or you need to be working in town
In town,
on a
right.
regular basis.
The only thing, you don't have will be, how will be is defined in working in town.
Right, like someone that
So
says
I'm
that.
gonna work in town a year from now, or I'm gonna work,
Like you have either a job or a promise
a
of a job?
promise of a job or
Maybe
something
a
of that
job
sort.
offer
Yeah.
letter, if they
Rachel?
need to move to town because they have a job offer.
A job offer? Yeah, okay. We can,
Maybe instead will be like proposed job or something, or,
she was talking about job offer, more of something more than concrete.
Right.
More concrete than I want to work in
yeah, right,
Eastham.
right.
No, probably what would you do there is maybe
Put an
an
asterisk
employment
or
offer
something.
within 3 months of the start of your
Yeah,
lease.
there you go.
Something like
Okay.
that.
Something of that sort, yeah. But so you have it in hand when you become eligible.
Maybe you got
When you're.
a contract with the
land-
Dorset district.
Your lessor becomes eligible to receive the funds because of you, you've got the 3 months, okay. Something in
So, on those points, other towns, well, Nantucket's kind of its own, so
Yeah.
they don't invite anybody over. But Provincetown does have, you only need to have a connection to Provincetown. And so that, we contemplated that, and it seems like that makes it tough to administer. It
Yeah.
just has potential conflicts, we thought. We thought this was pretty straightforward. Now, maybe a year's
Do
too
like
soon.
a
I think a year's
graduate of the
short.
Nauset Regional School or something, so you obviously
now
had
that
lived
brings
here
in-
when you were a child.
Then we have one
That
year.
brings in people from other towns that don't already live here.
Eastham Elementary, though.
The Provincetown's program extends to the Outer Cape.
Right.
And if you are on a board or committee or work in town.
Oh, that's nice.
So you think it should be more than 12 months, 24?
Yeah, I think it should be longer than 12 months.
Eastham resident for any length of time
If you
in
want to
the
do,
prior 24 months.
if you
Because
want to do Nauset District, that's kind of like Outer Cape.
Employee.
With school choice, not necessarily.
that's true.
Right.
That's true.
No, I think that those, I mean, I would leave it
Yeah.
restricted to this and see what what we get. And then
Yes.
if the demand is there at those parameters, then by no means should we be expanding it beyond
Yeah.
that. And then if we find we're not getting the demand, then expand.
Right, that's one of those
Right.
big course
Right.
corrections, I think.
That's
Yeah.
a
I like
great
the
idea.
24-month, though, I think.
But
like
yeah,
he
I
was
don't,
saying,
yeah, I don't mind the
because
24 months
What if,
thing.
18 months ago, someone lost their housing in Eastham, they really want to come back?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
That would be, yeah,
Yeah.
so anytime in the last 24 months.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's great.
Yeah, it is.
So I think
Thank
those are all
you.
the key points. Rachel, did you have anything to comment?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to mention is on page 2, under property owner grant amounts and disbursements, is we're still, flushing that out on what amounts that
Oh,
we think we
on
want
which
to
Like
one?
50% of the grant amount.
Number 3.
Yeah. B and C.
In terms of the overall total, and I think, I don't know, Rich, we did talk about this a little bit earlier about, we did have some other numbers where maybe we might go up a little bit higher in some of the bedrooms.
Like 4-bedroom, or you're saying more money per?
Per
bedroom.
unit.
Well, there's a couple,
mean, I
couple of
think those
interesting
are-
things. I mean, I felt pretty comfortable with these amounts. Those were
I'd be pretty psyched.
some suggestions we received, and based on my own, I did my own due diligence of what I thought. And as it turns out, my thinking matched up with the, more scientific results we got from elsewhere, but that's great. So, I feel pretty comfortable about that. But for example, to Rachel's point, and again, it's a different program in Provincetown, but they pay per person subsidy as opposed to, and that just seems overly complicated.
Yeah,
Again, yeah.
I agree.
No,
So-
I like the way it's structured right
It,
now.
sometimes we get too restrictive, and then it becomes something you didn't intend.
Well, rentals are usually,
We'll
it's
be
a studio, a
adopting-
one-bedroom, or a
I
two-bedroom.
think it's going to be
when you're gonna rent.
I mean, theoretically, the way this is written, you could rent a 3-bedroom to one person,
Yeah. And
when
I
it
think-
could house, say, 5 people.
But we have a lot of single-family homes. So it's like single-family homes are going to
Right.
be
Three
bigger.
bedroom.
Big,
Yeah.
yeah.
And some 3-bedrooms aren't really big three.
Right, they're
you know,
tiny.
so
Right,
it's
little
I think this is a
cottages, yeah.
self-correcting problem. And do we care if one person or a couple moves into a 3-bedroom? We created a unit, and they're
That's
moving
the
out of
unit.
another unit.
Yeah.
So, I'm not, we tend to overthink
parents'
these things.
basement.
So I don't think the by-person thing is a thing. And this is an area where I think probably Provincetown might be overpaying on this, the programmatic subsidies that they're providing, because they're doing it that basis.
Well, the other
That
thing about the
sounds-
per-person thing is you don't want to have to monitor how many people live in the unit.
Right.
A couple
Right.
could move in December and
Break up.
break up in February, and,
Or have triplets.
you know.
One of
No,
them
I
wants to
guess
keep
it's
the
only a
lease.
one-time
Yeah,
thing,
one of
so
them-
it,
Oh, God.
No, I think that's true. It's like micromanaging.
Right.
too much.
right,
Well, it's intrusive to
yeah.
the family.
Yeah, I agree.
So the final piece I just want to mention to all this
Point.
is we have an opportunity perhaps to work with Orleans on a similar program. So we got to kind of tie those loose ends up and see how that looks out. But the idea of doing that is hopefully it would save both communities about 35% on the administrative costs of running a program. So that's attractive to put more money into the programmatic piece as opposed to the administrative piece.
We
But-
work on them jointly administratively, but they would have theirs for Orleans
And we would have ours
residents,
for
and
Eastham.
ours would be for
Yeah.
Eastham
Be
residents.
two
Doing a
pots of
joint-
money, but a joint.
Having our RFP be a joint RFP so we get one administrator
One administration, right.
working for the two of us.
Yep.
Yeah, I like it.
That might necessitate, I mean, honestly, I personally don't think it does, but, if you have, if you're going to these pages, if Orleans, because they're a higher cost market, their 3-bedroom should be a $12,000 subsidy. Well, does that mean that we should now, do we have, I don't see why we can't have 10 and they can't have 12.
Right, it's just
Doesn't seem like a
administration.
hard administrative thing to me, but it might cause some angst on that. But if we're close, then maybe we, if we just have to go up to 11,000, maybe we do that to smooth that out. So we have to kind of talk through these issues and get them on board with some of the things that we just talked about the 250% AMI. Again, that is a high AMI if you're paying the tenant a subsidy.
Right.
So
Right.
you got to change some thinking of how people look at these things.
I do like the under 3, the B and C, where they don't get it all right away. They have to keep the people in there for the year, and
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, they've both worked very hard on it.
Could someone, just to play devil's advocate here, could someone do this one year, get the subsidy, not do it the next year to rent it out, and do it again? Or they've done it once, and so it's not a new
Well,
rental?
we're not doing it, unless we have some funding,
Money.
we're not doing it the second year.
True,
It's a one and done.
true.
So,
I mean, we sincerely hope that that is not the case.
Right.
but if we don't, say we don't do it the second year, and, but by year 3, we say, yeah, we got to do this again, and we put some money into it, we'd probably have to have that contingency, right?
Right.
Get us
Done
once, you're not
this,
going to get
this
us
is the one-
twice.
Right,
Right,
per
yeah.
property, per address.
Well,
It's
not-
per
But there's
address.
also a rooted rental.
Yeah, per address.
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a one and done.
No, but we're not going to let somebody participate in year 1, bag out in year 2, and then we're going to do it in year 3 and let you back in?
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
You cannot have participated in the program before.
That's
There
where you
are,
have to
there
have
is another program out there that assists a homeowner that's been renting. So, depending
yeah,
on
we
where
talked
we
about
go
that
with
too.
this and what the funds look like, we may take a
Right.
look at that
So there's
model
also
as
the
well.
concept of providing an ongoing subsidy, right? Which initially was my thought, was we could, but we just don't have the money. But, you could provide, it would be nice to know, and plus you'd have to administer it for a longer period of time without really having the pilot. So your subsidy's 10,000 year one, it's 6,000 year two, it's 3,000 year three, and then. But I think probably the path is, as Rachel suggests, is get this pilot out, and if we get 75% retention in that program, then great. But maybe in the future, we considered what they call the rented
The rooted,
rooters,
yeah.
or rooted renters
Rooted
program.
renters, so they
It's
get.
a smaller amount for existing rentals, because this is just for new
And for
ones.
people that maintain rentals.
Yeah, it's the same issue as, Verizon for the new customer versus the person who's had the phone for 10 years. We
The
can't
hook.
disenfranchise the people who are already renting to renters full-time.
And then finally, we felt pretty confident and comfortable with the program, but we did speak to legal counsel, and they agree that this does not run afoul of any of the
The Fair Housing.
anti-aid amendments, similar to our preschool program stuff.
Or the
And,
Fair Housing.
Or fair housing.
Good. Wonderful.
All right, well, thank you.
Nicely done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does the board need to take any action to approve this, to go to RFP?
Ultimately, I think the board would need to approve these regulations. I don't think you need to do it now, unless there's any, got some feedback, we'll make those changes that we discussed. It's fine for an RFP, and so we'll move forward with an RFP and probably present to you the results of that RFP and ask you to adopt, the regulations at that point.
Got it.
This is fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So Jackie, is this, should we be sending this to the Provincetown Independent editor?
Perhaps, once we get the RFP out there and everything, yes, that would be great.
I mean, because we're doing nothing, right?
We're doing nothing.
That was Jackie, not
Oh, yeah, it was me that was doing it, actually, to be fair, yeah. Jerry's been doing a lot of work on it.
All right, committee appointments. We have Barbara Schooley to the Cultural Council, David Pernall to the Planning Board, and Patricia Ann Canavan
Canavan.
Canavan to
sorry,
planning.
to the
Yeah.
Planning Board.
I'm on Cultural Council. I talked with Barbara. She's just excited about it. Art teacher before
Oh, great.
schools and stuff, and wants to do this. It was just, she was fine. I highly recommend her.
Yeah, I did the interviews with David and Patricia. Both were excellent candidates. David is going to be going on as a full member, and Patricia will be alternate. Both requested those roles as well, so it worked out convenient for the openings. Both are very excited to get on the committee, and, their backgrounds serve them well with, Patricia having zoning task force and David's thorough background with municipal government. So I'm excited for both of them.
Awesome. So we just need a motion.
I move,
Go ahead.
okay, I move that we appoint to the Cultural Council, Barbara Schooley, to Planning Board as a full-time member, David Purnell, and to the Planning Board as an alternative member, Patricia Ann Canavan.
Second?
All right, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 4-0. All right, committee resignation. Thomas McNamara from the Finance Committee. I'll need a motion and a letter, perhaps?
Yeah, I'll do the letter. I was hoping Kayla was here to see if I had missed any, but I'll have to talk to her. I move that we accept the resignation of Thomas McNamara from the Finance Committee.
Second?
All right, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 4-0.
I'll write the letter.
All right, town managers report.
I only have a couple of new items, but they're important. So we are raising the bulb on the water tower, so putting the bulb on the top of the tower on Thursday, September 5th.
For the air?
Wait, September 5th?
airline?
Yes,
You said-
September 5th. You have a ways to plan.
Like
your
a year
outfit.
from
Wait a
now,
minute,
kind of
September
thing?
5th?
Okay.
December 5th.
Oh,
Like, Okay, that's why I was like, that's
It
a
must be December 5th, I'm sorry.
okay.
Okay.
I don't know what we're talking about.
Oh, at a
You know the
trade
big
show in
round
Rhode
thing that goes on
Island.
top of the water tower,
For
they're raising it up.
airplanes, you know, so they know that something's that high.
Oh. Is there
Anyway.
one in the other one?
Yeah. It's just,
I've never really looked at the,
This
I
is
saw
like-
the, I saw
this is
the
like
ring
raising-
around the top, but.
Raising the mast on a sailboat or something, that's what.
all right, so we're doing that.
December
I
5th.
I also forgot to put in my report that the short-term rental software is up and running. I want to thank all staff for getting that up ready for November 1st, so people can now register their short-term rental online and they can pay online. It's a huge step forward for our short-term rental program. And then the last thing is, a company called Blue Sky is at the library this week. They are doing the roof repair. Hopefully, we are hopeful that this is the last roof repair. They are taking the panels off, they're replacing the membrane in that one valley section, and they're replacing the panels and then sealing the whole section. So keep your fingers and toes crossed, but that was $25,000. We're paying for it out of our normal maintenance line. The Independent did call me today about it, so I wanted you to know about it before you read it.
Read
in the
about it.
newspaper.
Is the flooring covered in that?
The flooring is not part of it, but that's actually happening now as well.
Today, I think,
Yes,
isn't it?
they were doing the flooring and up on the
Yeah.
roof.
All right,
So we'll be ready for the Turnip Festival.
Perfect.
yes, Saturday, Turnip
you.
Fest.
You know, one thing, we should say thank you to the citizens of Eastham, 84% voter turnout.
Isn't
Yeah,
that
Is wonderful, so bravo.
And I did say in my report to really special kudos to Town Clerk Linda Sassy and Kendra Menard, her assistant, and the administrative assistant Rachel Smith, because really, that is a lot of work to do the mailings for the early votings, the mailings of the ballots, the open for
Oh, yeah.
early voting. It's just, it's an
A
endless
lot of
cycle
time.
of election for them, and so they're exhausted, but
it's no longer
happy.
election day, it's a month
It's
and a half.
election month and a half, it is, yes.
Well, and you have to be on your toes. You have to make sure you do it all
has to be
absolutely
perfect.
correct.
Plus, I didn't count them, but we probably got at least 30 public records requests too, that they had to process, you know, how many voters did.
How many voters and what did you do?
And we had, I think, early voting was over 50%.
Yeah, it was
Of
huge.
registered voters. So of that 85%, probably,
And that's just
you know.
people coming in and out all the time, voting, and,
yeah, that's pretty amazing.
yeah, it's a lot.
All right, new and upcoming agenda items, I think
Tired.
we're tired.
Yeah.
I'm tired.
No, new.
We can call it a night.
We
Yep.
did a lot of stuff. I'm done.
Minutes are
Turnip
great.
Fest, Saturday,
Minutes.
10 to 2, oh, minutes, minutes? Well, they
Minutes.
were on here,
Minutes, at very bottom, 16th
very
and
bottom.
17th.
All right, minutes, yes.
But I didn't see the 17th in the packet, I mean, the 16th. I saw the 7th and the 21st.
I didn't even look at the
She
dates
said there
when I
were
read
two
them.
sets, so,
When I read them, I didn't look at the date, I have to say.
Well, 7 and 16 doesn't add up anyway. That's only 9
Typo.
days.
What am I doing here? I don't like that they're separate. What am I doing here? Oh,
So
here
we can
go.
approve the 7th.
Yeah.
Did you get those at the end of your packet?
They're under
Yeah.
10-7 and
Oh,
10-21.
Yeah,
board part.
Gotcha, okay.
yeah, they were the 21st and the 7th. She just wrote the date wrong on the,
Date's wrong.
we can still, I think
can
we
do
can
it?
still
Okay.
approve that, yeah.
So
Because they
I'll,
were in the packet.
So they're October 21st and October 7th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from October 21st and October 7th.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 4-0.
Great.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't
You
even
want
look
my
at the
motion
dates.
now?
Yes, Jerry.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. That was a lot of listening.